Welcome back to NY Flight Jets Talk. In this video, we'll be talking about what we do going into 2024, what we look ahead to. We will be doing a little preview of Jets versus Patriots. And today, I am joined by none other than the man himself, Mr. Matt O'Leary. Matt, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, my friend. Thank you so much for having me on, Connor. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Matt. I really appreciate it. First time having you on the show. Hopefully, not the last. So let's get right into it. What is your prediction for Jets versus Patriots? Do you not what you want to happen? What do you think will happen?
So I think this is going to be a low-scoring defensive game between two teams who struggle to put up points.
Agreed.
The Jets are slight underdogs going into this game. The Patriots are favored by like a 1.5. I think it's a game the Jets could absolutely win. And I don't know if that's necessarily best for this team right now with the draft positioning, but I think I'm going to go 16-13, a Jets win, low scoring, not a lot of points, especially with the weather up in Foxborough.
I I agree. I think it'll be a low scoring affair. My opinion, I don't know what I want to happen. I've been saying I want the Jets to win, but at this point, if we win other than breaking the streak, it really does us no good. I want to be in a position where we still have a chance for Olu Fashanu or Joe Alt to be available. Those are my two guys I want available. If not, Tyrese Fuega. No JC Latham. I do not want JC Latham. It is Mekhi Becton all over again. Another 365-pound tackle. Stay away from JC Latham. Fuega, Alt, and Fashanu are my guys. Particularly, I think Fashanu is the best tackle in this draft class. Very, very talented. Brick wall out of Penn State. And that leads me to my next question. Your top 5 draft picks you will not trade back from.
Yeah, I think you just listed off at least two in Alt or Fashanu. I think those guys absolutely make the list. Now, it depends on what happens here, right? Because if the Jets lose this game, they could get as high as pick 5. So I think you're gonna find more names closer to that range. Marvin Harrison Jr. would be one that I wouldn't trade away from now. I think that one would be a lot tougher to make it there at 5, but who knows if these quarterbacks start to go, maybe guys who we expected to go higher up begin to fall. So those would be my top 3 there. I would also say Malik Neighbors, the wide receiver from LSU. I think he's someone who is a game changer at the wide receiver position. And then really beyond that, I guess if I had to add a 5th, I might put Fuaga on there because I agree with you. I think he's offensive tackle 3. I think it's between him and Latham. I do lean Fuaga. And I think he's someone who could come in and start right away. It might be at right tackle instead of left, but I think he's good enough on the offensive line where you could plug him in from day one.
Yeah, I agree. I think Marvin Harrison's going to be a little bit of a reach as we can get as high as 5, but there's some shuffling that can happen. I mean, if it might go Caleb Williams, Drake May, and then just quarterbacks keep falling, and then Jared Verse is a solid pass rusher. Maybe there's some shuffling around and he goes into the top 5. Like, you never know what's going to happen in the draft. It's very unpredictable, but I don't see Marvin Harrison getting to 5, and that's the lowest we can get in the order. That's like if everything goes accordingly, that's the best we can get. Pick number 5. I don't see the Cardinals passing up on Marvin Harrison Jr. That's the one team that I look at, and possibly if the Bears are ahead of us in the draft order. I like Rome Odunes out of Washington. I think he's very solid. Malik Neighbors is a great red zone target out of LSU. The only thing that scares me is his size profile. I'm a big fan of Keon Coleman out of Florida State. I just don't think we take him where we are because I feel like we might be going on him a little early, reaching on him. I think he falls a little later, but he's very, very solid wide receiver out of FSU, and I think the first round pick is very important. I agree, but for me, the ones that win drafts are third, fifth, day three picks. Those are the picks that win draft classes. I think the Jets are going to need to have a solid four through three, one, 3 through 7 rounds, as we don't have a second round pick. I think we have a first, a third, two fourths, a sixth, and a seventh. I think that's accurate. So we're going to need to hit on our day three picks as we don't have a ton of early round picks. What are your thoughts, Matt?
Yeah, I think you nailed it on that one, especially not having the second rounder is going to be tough. But, you know, you're hoping to get an impact guy in the first round, whether it's at offensive tackle or wide receiver. And then beyond that, like that's so true. Because a lot of times people look at the first round, they go, wow, they got this extremely talented guy. But then, you know, the depth of the class isn't quite there. And this Jets team, what they need some depth on this roster. So I'm with you. I think rounds, 3 through 5 are going to be really important. And Joe Douglas has shown the ability to move around the draft board a little bit. So I'm curious to see if he gets creative and if there's someone that he likes that's falling, if he tries to trade and move up for him.
Yeah, I agree with that. My dream draft class that's realistically, I think I posted it in my top 7 guys. I mentioned it, but first round Olu Fashanu, third round Zach Zenter, fourth round Blake Corum and Jordan Travis, sixth round TJ Sanders, and seventh round Deshaun Pace. I think Olu Fashanu's a brick wall. Zach Center was supposed to go in the first or second round, but he got that bad injury. Solid guard out of Michigan. Blake Corum, this running back room next year is going to only be Izzy Abandokonda and Brees Hall. Blake Corum, solid red zone guy out of Michigan for a day 3 pick. Jordan Travis is going to be that QB3 we are looking for. He's injured, so he might take a year or two to be able to get involved in the system, but a very solid quarterback 3. TJ Sanders, someone's going to need to replace Al Woods. I would love to have Al Woods back. I just think he's going to retire, but solid run stopper from South Carolina, I believe. And then Deshaun Pace in the 7th round reminds me of Quincy Williams, played the safety position, forcing fumbles, just wrecking the game. So personally, those are my top 7 guys. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I love the positions that you're going after, right? Like, I think it's so key in the first round for the Jets to either land a offensive lineman or wide receiver. And my preference is offensive line. So that means, you're going to have to be aggressive in free agency or the trade market to land a number 2 receiver to pair with Garrett Wilson. But even, in the mid rounds in the draft, I think you could absolutely look for someone to add. Someone you mentioned a lot of Michigan guys, Michigan receiver I like is Roman Wilson in the mid rounds.
Great.
I wouldn't be opposed to adding him. Now, I don't think he's a number 1 or 2 receiver, but you could use depth. It's really beyond Garrett Wilson going into next year. There's a lot of question marks in the receiver room. So Zinter's a great name on the interior. That's someone that I would love if he's there in the third or fourth round potentially. And I'm with you on taking a swing at the quarterback spot, whether it's someone that I like is the Tulane quarterback. You got Michael Pratt. I'm not sure if Jordan Travis is going to be. I guess you bring up a good point with the injury though, so he might end up falling a little bit more on draft boards. But yeah, I don't think they're going to necessarily be in the running for some of those top guys. But it wouldn't surprise me at all if like a Michael Pratt, a Cam Ward, Jordan Travis, someone like that.
I agree. I'm not a big fan of Michael Pratt. I've seen a good amount of film on him. I'm not too high on him. I like Sam Hartman from Notre Dame. I like Spencer Rattler from South Carolina. Just like for me, they're all the same. Those day 3 quarterbacks, they're all good for day 3, but to me, they're all the same quarterback. It just depends. It's a lottery pick. Jake Asman's been saying it. No matter where you are in the draft order, you're still gonna have to hit on the pick. And for me, I think we just need to rebuild this whole offensive line. We have 2 starters going into next year. It's AVT and Joe Tippmann. Lakin cannot start on this offensive line. Mekhi Becton cannot start on this offensive line. everyone but AVT and Titman cannot start on this offensive line. That leads me to my next question. What is your dream offensive line going into next year?
Yeah, so I think that's a great point that you have two guys who you're pretty comfortable in, and then beyond that, there's a major question mark. So, for me, it's a first round offensive tackle, whether that is Alt, Fashanu, Fuaga, one of those names. A Zach Zinter type, I think, also makes a lot of sense. Is a name that you mentioned in the draft. There's a couple other names in there that maybe you look in that range. Donovan Jackson from Ohio State is another mid-round guy who I've seen come up a lot in mock drafts, but Zinter's the name that really jumps out to me as someone that I like. Titman, I think, is going to plug and play at center. Right. I think the question then is, do you have AVT at tackle or guard? And while my preference is for AVT to play guard, I think it's a lot easier to find two new guards than it is two new tackles, especially with the price point of these tackles in free agency. So I think I would play AVT at right tackle and then look for a mid-level free agent like a good example is Ezra Cleveland, who was on the trade
Yes.
that the Jets ended up passing on. He goes to Jacksonville, but he's done a nice job filling in there. So like a that level of veteran guard, like a $5 million or less guard, somewhere in that range, plugs in at right guard, which is again trying to find three offensive line new starters on the offensive line. Really, really tough task. So I think Joe Douglas is going to have to get a little creative here.
So yeah, I agree to disagree on some of those points you made there. Very solid points. So this is the way I look at it. You have Titman at center, and then we look at AVT. So AVT got injured playing tackle. I don't know if that has anything to do with it. I feel like it was kind of just a fluke injury. But in my opinion, I think that we can play him at tackle if we give him any preseason reps. I think that would be a good way to look at it. Maybe see if he's equipped to play tackle. I still think we leave him at guard. So either way, Timon at center, AVT at guard. That's like your foundation. And then you have Alt, Vishanu, or Fuega. In my opinion, it doesn't matter what side you play them on. Let's just say they play right tackle, one of them. So you have Timon center, AVT right guard, Alt, Vishanu, or Fuega at right tackle. Then you go to the left side. I think you can move Zinter to left guard. I don't think it would be that big of a change. Or possibly, I don't want to see Lakin start next year. I still think there's a chance they start him. So that's fine. One of them will be your guard next year. Fine. And then we go over to the left tackle. I think Jonah Williams is that guy that we bring in to play that left tackle position. Not too high on Bakhtiari. I feel like Bakhtiari is the biggest turf truther, so to speak. So I feel like he would get MetLife to be grass. But I can see him if MetLife doesn't change to grass, sitting out 8 games a year. And for me, that's the biggest issue. I want to bring in a tackle who has no distractions, blah, 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 and just gets right to play and just tears up the field.
Yeah, I'm with you. The injuries for me with Bakhtiari really scare me because when healthy, there's no denying he's extremely talented, one of the best tackles in football, but he's missed a lot of time over the last few years. And the biggest thing with this Jets offense, and specifically the offensive line, is the number of injuries that they dealt with. So I'm with you. I would avoid that one. Jonah Williams is interesting. I think he's come along better this year. He was someone who I thought gave up a lot of sacks in years gone by, but he's become a little bit more steady later into his career. So that I think is a good free agency name to keep a close eye on.
Yeah, I think Jonah Williams very solid tackle, but you look at Lakin. You can't say honestly that Lakin deserves to start next season. He's allowing 13 pressures allowed against the 32 ranked defense, and then you have Jake Hansen on the other in the other guard position who allowed 0 pressures against the 32 ranked defense. I just that Lakin does not deserve to start. Period. He's a all these guys who have started on this offensive line are second and third string guys. Um, Carter Warren, I think, could be the swing tackle next year. That's the only I thought he's had a solid go with the Jets so far this season. I think he could be what we hoped Billy Turner was this year, but that did not go well. I think Max Mitchell needs to be cut. I mean, he showed some promise when he came back from that injury last year, but this year it's just been terrible. I think Mekhi Becton, I don't know, cut, but he cannot start on this team. The whole offensive side of the ball needs to be changed around. I think Keith Carter needs to be fired. I mean, Taylor Lewan told me all I needed to know about Keith Carter. Like, position coach 30 or 30, 31 or 32 ranked offensive line gone. There's no way he can return. That's just unacceptable. And speaking of all the issues with the offensive line, that leads me to my next question. 5 key additions you would like to see this offseason, and I'm assuming all of yours are on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, pretty much. Most of these additions come on the offensive side of the ball, and we hit on a lot, right? Like I think first round tackle is definitely one that I would put on the very top of my list. And we know the three names we talked a lot about already. Number two would be a wide receiver, whether that is a Devonte Adams trade or signing a T. Higgins or Mike Evans, like someone of a wide receiver of that level, I think is very, very important to add. Next would be in free agency, signing either a guard or a tackle, depending on what you want to do with Elijah Vera Tucker. Like in your scenario, you were playing him at guard, so you had Jonah Williams, totally fine if that's the route you want to go. Or if you're comfortable playing AVT at tackle, adding a starting guard in free agency, I think is an absolute must. Backup signing a veteran backup quarterback for me is also makes it there. I think a Jacoby Brissett or Ryan Tannehill, Gardner Minshew, a name like in that tier of quarterback. And then really for me is just number 5. I'll just say offensive depth, whether that's a wide receiver 4 or another running back in here to add to the room with Izzy Abanikanda and Breece Hall. I just think they need to do a better job of depth at their skill positions because we saw with a couple injuries that it could get ugly pretty quick.
Yeah, in my opinion, I think I agree with you. I think wide receiver 3 is a big guy to go after. Wide receiver 2, especially T. Higgins, lock him up. I don't care how much money it takes. Just an absolute dog, game wrecker. Mike Evans is a great option. I will do anything in my power to not get Devonte Adams in a New York Jets uniform. I was on Boy Green Daily about a week or two ago, and some guy put in the chat, trade Bryce Huff for Devonte Adams, and I'm like, no, I don't think we should do that. I mean, I could see Bryce Huff as a tag and trade type of guy, but I'm trying to stay away from Devonte Adams, 31-year-old receiver. I can see his contract looking like 3 years, $95 million. I'd rather bring in a Mike Evans or a T. Higgins type of guy. And then when it comes to wide receiver 3, I think Alan Lazard cannot be anywhere higher than number 4 on this depth chart. So let's say you sign T. Higgins or Mike Evans. So you have Garrett Wilson at 1, Higgins or Evans at 2. 3 is open, 4 Lazard, 5 Gibson, 6 Brownlee. I think you can bring in Kendrick Bourne to be that wide receiver 3. 2 years, $18 million deal. I think, or 1 year, $9 million deal, whatever you want to bring him in for. I think he could be a solid wide receiver number 3. Buffalo Jet fan was saying it the other day. His stats are almost equal to T. Higgins. They are like very comparable players. I think Kendrick Bourne's very solid wide receiver, and I think the Pats might give him up as they have a very skilled wide receiver room. But I think those guys are all guys we need to go after, and the offensive line just needs to go. Backup quarterback, Gardner Minshew, Teddy Bridgewater, Jacoby Brissett, maybe Baker Mayfield. I think Baker Mayfield returns, though, if the Buccaneers end up winning that division. They're probably going to finish whatever they are, and they're still going to win that division because that division is terrible, as the Jets would probably still be competing for a division title if they were in the NFC South. But I totally agree with what you're saying, but what do you think we do with Bryce Huff this offseason?
I really hope they find a way to extend him. I understand that on the offensive side of the ball, they need a lot of change, and a lot of people are saying, well, you can't pay him and then also figure out the offense. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think there is absolutely a world where you can give him a contract that has a team friendly cap number in year one. And then maybe as the years go on, it changes a little bit. But you look at someone who's 25 years old, that's usually about the prime for these pass rushers. It's very rare that they come in and are dominant right away. He's a homegrown talent too. Like you found him as an undrafted free agent and he's developed here. I think it would be a mistake to let him walk and to be great somewhere else because that's what I think would happen. I think someone would pay him $15 million a year and he would be a perennial 10 sack guy. And, I understand they drafted Will McDonald and they want him to be a part of this unit. That's fine. But sometimes plans change. And I'm not saying you move on from Will McDonald, but, him and Jermaine are on cheap deals the next, few years. To me, there's no reason you can't keep Bryce Huff while also having Will McDonald and Jermaine Johnson.
Yeah, I agree. I think we keep Bryce Huff. He's, in my opinion, Joe Douglas's best find. Homegrown kid, undrafted free agent. Joe Douglas hasn't had the best finds in his tenure with the Jets. I think my opinion, we franchise tag him, put the $17.4 million tag on him, give him one more year. But when it comes to the D-line, very, very talented defensive line. I want to bring Solomon Thomas back on a one-year deal. I think he's been incredible. But I think offense is priority. If we can't afford to bring him back, if we put the offense in jeopardy by bringing him back, don't do it. But if it doesn't affect much, do it. The offensive line, though, 100% priority. But Bryce Huff, very, very talented pass rusher. But I I saw a tweet from Buffalo Jet fan the other day about, so someone said that Mike LaFleur has been the biggest impact in that Rams offense. And he said just because Mike LaFleur and Matthew Stafford are better than Nathaniel Hackett, Tim Boyle, Trevor Siemian, and Zach Wilson does not mean he's competent. I agree with him. Like I 100% wanted LaFleur gone, but I can't look back now and say we should have kept LaFleur because at the time it was the right choice. I was never a big fan though of bringing Hackett in, but if I had to go back in time, I still would have fired LaFleur. But going back to Bryce Huff, totally agree with you what you said. We need to bring him back.
No, absolutely. And yeah, it's tough when you look at the I understand why they move off him last year with how they finished. I think he's just a creative mind. I think he's a good play designer, but I think there was some flaws to his game with player relations, and I think that's what ended up doing it. It's just a little frustrating to see guys have success that were here. And sure, McVay and obviously Stafford are a big reason for that. But yeah, I mean, if you had to do it all over again, if you guarantee that Rodgers is here because of Hackett, you deal with it, I guess. And who knows? Maybe in 2024 with Rodgers back, it's not nearly as bad than with Zach Wilson, Tim Boyle, and Trevor Siemian.
Totally agree with you, Matt. Thank you so much for joining us. See you on the next one. Thank you, Matt.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Connor.
Any final thoughts?
Yeah, just excited to see what we do in the offseason. Offseason time is the most exciting time as a Jet fan right now, which is disappointing, but back again for another year.
Yeah. I saw a tweet from New York Jets fans only, I think it was. He said, no matter how bad this team is, it's always sad to have the last game of the year. I don't know. I hope it's an interesting game. I don't want to say I want us to win. I don't want to say I want us to lose. I want it to be an interesting game. No blowouts. But thank you, Matt, for joining us, and we'll see you on the next one.